Hi, today we're going to look at the new Moog Subsequent 25. So in the words of Moog, the Subsequent 25 is a compact analog synthesizer that builds on the legacy of the ever-popular Sub Fatty, which this replaces. You may be familiar with Moog's range, which includes the very grand and awesome Subsequent 37, and this is kind of like a distilled version of a Subsequent 37. It sounds fundamentally different to the Sub Fatty. It's capable of being more mean, and it's also capable of being more polite. Yeah, it's really quite good. Wow. Yeah, hell. So this thing is really gnarly, as befits the kind of like noir aesthetic of this thing. But the whole thing about the range is important. I'm going to go through the sort of key points with the voicing architecture. And I guess the main one is gain staging. This is something that's true of any synth. It's important the settings that you have the volume knobs in, because that really can make all the difference. It's a well-known thing that on the original Mini Moog, there was actually drive built into the mixer, accidentally apparently, which they purposefully did not remove because it always made things sound better. And the Subsequent 25 is no different. If you drive the mixer, you will note, if you are very eagle-eyed, that the mixer settings don't go to 11, they go to 12. So, fair enough, mate. Let me very quickly just mention the sort of tools that you have at your disposal in this voice. And that is to say that you have two oscillators, which are very, very stable. So they will only be out of tune if you ask them to be. There is a sub-oscillator, hence the name, sub. And that sub-oscillator is a square wave. So you've got two oscillators and a sub-osc, which is an octave down. You've also got some noise. We have analog low-pass filter. Now, interestingly, using the little menu combos, you can change the response of the filter from 6 to 18 to 24 pole dB even. I always get that wrong. 6 to 18 to 24 dB, which have different responses. So you've kind of got different filter modes that you can activate. Then you've got multi-drive, which drives the heck out of the filter. You've got a mixer that can drive as well. Two envelopes. The envelopes can be looping if you set them up that way. And then you've got a modulation LFO, a wobulator, which you can use to wobulate things. And that's kind of the voice. There is also sync between the oscillators, which we'll play around with. and a few routing things to do with the modulation. As well, there are lots of things that are hidden in the menus to do with how the synth kind of articulates, how it responds to MIDI, lots of kind of housekeeping things. The whole beauty of this thing is that most of the things that you need to mess around to have a good time with the Moog synth are here. So, let's mess. So this is oscillator 1. And that's the ladder filter with no resonance. I'll turn up the resonance. You can hear that kind of super sing-song thing. And then we can drive with multi-drive. So we've got these two things. Mixer drive here, multi-drive there. And the two work together. And then I can apply modulation. So things get mad pretty fast. What I was doing there is you've got to have the modulation wheel up, and then these are your 3 modulation wheel destinations. Pitch, which is to say pitch. Get kind of a funky kick drum thing going on. And then filter, the filter. Or wave amount, which is to do with the wave controls here, because you have different sort of tone colors that you can pick with the oscillators. I do them by just turning this dial. So I'll turn multi-drive back down, I'll turn the mixer down a little bit. This is key to getting a more clean sound, is don't have the mixer all the way up, don't have the multi-drive all the way up, just kind of play around. The middle settings are good too for different things. So that's just your sort of core triangle. And as I turn this, it moves smoothly between the waveforms. Pulse width modulation of a square wave to a triangle, saw, and then to a triangle. And then if I adjust wave amount, that's turning that dial for me. And I've got different shapes. And I can also use filter envelope, this one, filter envelope, as a source. So I can use the filter envelope here to control wave amount if I wish. And I can also use it to control the filter, actually I am already. So that's one oscillator. Does not sound terrible. Let's add more oscillators. So we've got 2 oscillators and a sub-oscillator and noise. So let's try sub-oscillator as well. I'll kind of get this to do less of a piao-piao kind of sound, more of a steady sound. Very steady. Get a kind of theremin. And there is glide. So, extremely theremin-y. 2 oscillators though. That's the seconder. And it becomes really important how you have the oscillators on the mixer, because by having one up full, it will kind of fill the soundstage and push the other one out of the way. So you kind of have to work them together carefully. And then, because it's a 2 oscillator synth, we have a frequency control. Bit of noise. It's a really weird noise as well. It's like... It sounds super odd. I genuinely have never heard a noise circuit that sounds like this. Okay, so noise, but then we've got a sub-oscillator. Hear that? Without, and then with. So it's nice. Using the sub-oscillator just adds all of that kind of low-end fatness. So you can use the oscillators to do kind of higher-end stuff. Pretty rad. We have this KB amount thing. What that's doing is it's allowing the filter to open or close a bit more depending on how high or low we play the keyboard, which has the effect, if you have a little bit of resonance, of meaning that when you play low on the keyboard, the sound is a bit darker. When you play high on the keyboard, it's brighter. So it kind of beds in just a natural variance in sound that spreads across the keyboard. Ooh. Oof. So yeah, multi-drive is just so nice. It lets everything become more older and crustier. I've talked before when I've shown the subsequent 37, like, yeah, multi-drive feels like an aging circuit. It just makes everything sound more like you dream an analog synth sounds, if that makes sense. Just more driven and more crusty and more raw and more mean. Oof. One of the cool things you can also do with KB amount on the filter is get the keyboard to play the filter precisely. If you look carefully on the keyboard amount, it has a 1-to-1 and a 2-to-1 control. And this is to do with scaling. So if you have it at 1-to-1, then with full resonance, here with no resonance, this is just the noise going through. Resonance starts to become a kind of audible tone all by itself. And if I've got KB amount to 1-to-1, it plays the filter precisely from the keyboard. So you can use the filter as an extra voice. So it's that mini Moog thing. It's like, yeah, on the mini Moog it was 3 oscillators, but in a weird way it was 4 because you could use the filter as an extra oscillator. And if you just backed off on resonance a little, you would still hear the singing of the filter mixed in with the other oscillators. And that's possible here as well. You just have to be careful with level, like I said before. And then I could add some vibrato. But it's not vibratoing the filter. To do that, I have to turn up a bit of the filter amount. And now the filter will vibrato as well as the pitch will vibrato. I know it's a classic trick, but this can do it too. And what more to show you, shall I? Actually, there is a very important thing with the oscillators, which is oscillator 2 can be hard synced to oscillator 1. What this means is that if I just play oscillator 1, so that's oscillator 1, being all oscillator 1E, here's 2, and I can tune oscillator 2 to oscillator 1, as I just did then. But if I push hard sync, then you get this kind of awesome sound. And that is hard syncing 2 to 1. Phone for you. There are a lot of really weird tones that you can get with modulation set to really high amounts. So the LFO goes super fast. You use it to control pitch and filter. You get these kind of really like gnarly tones. That sound kind of ring modded. So despite the kind of wacky stuff, I do think that the whole main strength of these synths is just being absolutely incredible at just super bassy, fat tones. Just stuff that you would, if you would actually use in your music with the best will in the world. You know, no bad vibes about weird sounds, but like, it just depends what type of music you make. But I kind of always have, I'm always going to have time for a sound like this. So I mentioned earlier that you have kind of multiple filter slopes in the machine, and I really want to show you those because I love the 6 dB filter slope. There's just a sort of personal preference. So the way that we control kind of secret functions is you push 4 on panel, and the panel sort of light will wink at me to say that it's time to do some funky mode stuff. And I push, in this case, patch 1 and bank 2. And this little combo, they're like symbols. That tells me that I'm on filter slope selection. I push key C, and now it should be on 6 dB. Which has got this kind of amazingly howly sort of vowel sound. Really like that. And I'm going to use the sample and hold, like i.e. random LFO, and I'll control that a little bit. One of the things I'm noticing is when I play notes, I kind of want the envelope to re-trigger every time I hit a note. And you can totally change this. This is called multi-trig on the subsequent 37. And on here, I just go into this little symbol and hit this key. And it should. Just like that. But there is a kind of major menu setting, which is the whole duo mode thing. Let's change that so that we can mess around with the duo mode. I always kind of end up making something that sounds a little bit like the Zelda soundtrack. I guess it's like that pastoral droney vibe, like I've got a bagpipe. I'm happy to report I've never been allowed to play with bagpipes. There's something there, I'm not quite sure what. Yeah, I'm really not sure what that was, but I had fun. Okay, so I mentioned that the subsequent 25 responds to MIDI. This is kind of one of the most important things about the synth, because obviously you have this amazing analog voice, but you have this amazing analog voice under complete and total MIDI control. And I just want to kind of mess around a little bit with that, because I think it's a huge selling point of these machines. And if you're not kind of rinsing the voice using MIDI, well, you're not really using all of what you paid for. So let's mess a little with that. And to do that, I have this posh sequencer called the Cirklon, which you don't need. You can use MIDI CCs to edit this thing, so you could just be using your computer and drawing automation curves, but it's fun to use the Cirklon, so I've got one. So let's just use that. And to accompany us, I have the DFAMs over here, which are being triggered by the Cirklon, just firing off their own little voices. So it's a Moog, totally Moog voice. And then we've got the sub 25. So if I go over to the sub 25 here, I can turn notes on and off, obviously. And I'm just using it as a sound module, so I'm not touching the keyboard, obviously. And then I can start doing fun things like messing with velocity. Now, you can map basically everything in the voice. So like the oscillator like levels or the amount of noise, which is something that makes me think of the DFAM, i.e. so that you can have loads of noise per step or not. And you can modulate the filter and the resonance. And so I've kind of gone through and I've chosen some kind of choice little things to mess with. On the Cirklon, you can actually edit MIDI parameters, and I've gone through and named these things. So I've got filter, i.e. the cutoff, and LFO rate, that's the rate of the LFO, the resonance, the amount of noise, the tuning of VCO2, so you can detune VCO2 per step, super cool, so it's like Duophonic programming, and the mod wheel amount, which is controlling how much we're sending of the modulation to various places. So these are kind of 6 parameters. You can automate all of them if you like, but I'm going to do 6 because, heck, that's enough. Let's do some filtering so we can write values. also got resonance. So the LFO rate will change mid-bar. And then the tuning of VCO2. But I've got VCO2 hard synths, so it'll be a timbral control. Ace. That was acidic. Apologies. As I said, this thing can be very mean, but it can be soft and beautiful if you program it to be soft and beautiful. After all, it's just a synth. And synthesizers do whatever you tell them to be. It's pretty amazing, this synth. Kind of what the subsequent 25 offers is a very compact synth. The things that you need are there. There are some extra things that are hidden, but it's kind of about the sound. I mean, like, just listen to the thing. It sounds amazing. And I think, despite its classic nature, there is a particular sound to the subsequent. It is unique. And once you factor in the whole MIDI prospect, which is the whole notion of pushing and pulling around the values that are in the synth, it's the kind of synth that would be an excellent starter machine. Like, if you only had one analog synth, you just are not going to go wrong with this voice. Quite honestly, if it speaks to you what you've heard in this video, then that's just the tip of the iceberg. But in a production environment, if you are in the business of actually finishing tracks, doing stuff, having some recalls, but also just working quickly, then you have got presets. You can go out, you can just pick a sound and play. And also, to reiterate that point about the modern context, if you buy one of these, you get access to their VST editor as well. So that if you just make music on a computer, then this thing just sits next to it with USB going into it, and you control the voice, record presets, make it work in a modern context. There have definitely been times with synthesizers where their separation from my computer means that I tend not to use them. This talks very happily to computers. So perhaps thou shalt consider the subsequent 25 for thy dishy. And on that bombshell, it's time to say thanks very much for watching. See you next time. Bye.